All right.
I did post in the chat that we will have a sequel to this event because we're going to talk about hybrid as a format is kind of the part of the mix of this whole online trend. But we're going to do a separate event on that next month. I posted a link in the chat. I'll post it one more time. And so we would love to have you back for that as well. So that will be October 24th, if I remember that right. My name is David Carr. I led this club to charter 5 years ago, 2017. So that's a year after Toastmasters International officially began allowing online clubs, recognizing that there could be such a thing as an online Toastmasters club. Now, before that, except for a few experiments, the rule was that if you held an online meeting, it wasn't a real meeting. You gave an online speech, it wasn't a real speech. And some of the people who are with us tonight helped to change that perception. And of course, yes, we did have this big pivot point during the pandemic where members of this club and other clubs that have been formed specifically to do online meetings got to help our peers in other districts, other areas, learn how to conduct a Toastmasters meeting online, how that could be done productively. A charter member and early board member of this club, Carol Brahensky, was actually on the TI International Board during that period when they were having to make decisions in a hurry. And she said she was much better prepared because of the experience she had gotten through online presenters. But I have to tell you, members of the online club community don't always feel appreciated by Toastmasters International. Now I'm still holding a little bit of a grudge about what happened with EVV CON. Now, if you haven't heard of this, this was a virtual Toastmasters conference that was organized by a couple of leaders of this club. Nick Lacani and Lois Margolin reached out to other online clubs and said, let's get together, let's have a bigger event than we could put on ourselves. We'll bring in some great speakers, we'll hold some contests. We did this in December 2020, at the end of that first pandemic year. We did it again in June 2021. We invited people from the TI board. And then this year, I was supposed to host a third one in April, and I get a letter in March saying, cease and desist, Toastmaster Carr. You cannot do this because you do not represent any organization above the club level. You're not an area, a division, or a district, and so you may not put on a multi-club event and call it a Toastmasters event. Now, you can't tell me that we couldn't have worked something out there. If they'd been willing to talk with me, we could have added disclaimers, we could have done various things, but instead we had to change the name of the event. We had to take out the T and the M because those are owned by Toastmasters according to Sesame Street rules. And so we went forward with the Elevate the Value of Virtual Conference, EVV CON, and it was great. But we had to pretend that it had nothing to do with Toastmasters, even though it was put on entirely by Toastmasters volunteers with mostly Toastmasters speakers. And so that was just dumb. Toastmasters International, you can do better than that. Now, I know the Toastmasters International president who was just inducted, Matt Kinsey. I invited him tonight. He said he didn't want to be here making pronouncements about policies that are still being debated. Well, I'll say that I find it somewhat comforting that they know that they don't have it all figured out, that they have things to debate, that they have things to work out. And so there's some policies coming, maybe in the spring. But one of the goals of tonight's meeting is maybe have some input into that, have some say in that. If they want to listen to us, to get together some people to talk about what the issues are, where we can do better, and we'll try and keep it constructive. And now, because those original Toastmasters clubs and Toastmasters leaders had to be mavericks, had to get the rules changed, I think they have a little bit of a reputation of being people who whine and complain and make trouble and start. I don't think of myself as a troublemaker. I'm a reasonable fella. And so we're going to try, and for every problem, every challenge we raise, we're going to try and suggest some solutions, and not just solutions that Toastmasters International can make as rules or change as rules, but things we can do ourselves to bring about better outcomes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for the evening, Marianne Grady. You're in charge, and I'm going to work on spotlighting people so that we know who's involved here.
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion. We have 6 subject matter experts who have very different experience regarding aspects of online Toastmaster clubs. Most are longtime Toastmasters, and as your moderator, it's not my job to give my opinion. It's my job to guide the conversation so that you get information to help you develop your own thoughts and opinions on the future of online Toastmasters. Before we get started, I'd like to cover some housekeeping. Our panelists, Timer, and myself will be spotlighted during the workshop. Panelists have been briefed and asked to keep their replies to 2 minutes or less, except for the first question where they're going to do self-introductions, and that they'll have 3 minutes for that. We do have a little leeway, so if they go past their time, it's okay as long as a strong point is being made. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat. And as we begin the audience participation section of this meeting, and that's going to be roughly 8:30, 8:35, depending on how the conversation's going. Our steadfast chat monitor, Mr. Jim Barber, will be going through the chat and bringing forth your questions. So please, we want you to put them in there. We are happy if you have a disagreeing kind of opinion, because that's what makes it interesting. This is a discussion. We want to get a lot of information out on the table. So as long as everybody is respectful, that's very fine. And now if you're viewing this on the replay, please feel free to send any questions to the email here that I have above in on my background, because we can answer them after the fact. Now, again, our panelists will give a brief introduction of themselves and then answer the first question. So let's see where this conversation goes. So panelists, give us an overview of how you got started with online clubs and what's the most valuable thing you've gained from the experience and your biggest challenge. I'd like to call on Graham.
Good morning, Marianne. Good morning, everybody, by the way. I am proof, no matter what your Monday is like, that it gets better, or at least it gets over, because I'm in Tuesday. Bit of experience, bit of background for me. I'm a Toastmaster of some years. I originally joined back in the 1980s, but then life got in the way. I left. I came back about, I don't know, 8 years ago. And my experience with online clubs began primarily when Pathways was being rolled out. There were 2 districts, George's was one of them, another one was in Maryland, where you could get access to Pathways before all of the other districts in the world. And one of those clubs in that district was a hybrid club. They used GoToMeetings, which I have to tell you is a terrible, terrible software platform for conducting online meetings, but that was what they had. And so I joined that club. I also joined a couple of online clubs that were online only, some of the proto clubs. These days, I am a member of 3 clubs here in my own district of District 69 in Queensland. One of them is and has been hybrid for longer than COVID. The other 2 are brick and mortar only clubs. And then I'm a member of 3 online only clubs, all of them specialty. So that's who I am and where I am from. I am an online evangelist, but I am not wedded to only online clubs.
All right, well, thank you, Graham. I'm going to move on in alphabetical order, though we're going to ignore David Carr since you already heard a lot from him. So let's move on to Joseph Easler.
Thank you, Marianne. It was to achieve my DTM. That's why I started a Tragic Comedy Toastmasters. That whole experience has been so valuable in terms of leadership. Now I feel like an actual DTM where I can tell people, don't time me, don't train me. That's the other meaning of DTM people forget about. You get to be fully self-sufficient by taking on this new normal and starting up an online club. I came from a college club at the University of Colorado, CU Toastmasters, where we met in person. And I just scoffed at the idea of doing things online until the pandemic came. And that was the only option. In order to achieve my DTM, I had to either be a club sponsor, a club mentor, or a club coach. I really wanted to be a club sponsor, founding my own club. I kept pleading with TI to be able to get an extension on my DTM because I was dead set on starting up an in-person club. I thought it was ridiculous when we were going to meet in person with my previous president at CU Toastmasters. I was totally a late adopter in this whole online thing, unlike David here and various other folks. Back in 2017, you started this club. That is amazing. The pandemic is what forced me to go online if I wanted to achieve my DTM. And through doing that, I learned how great it was. I wouldn't want to have it any other way, because look at us here today. We have people from all over the country, all over the world, all these lovely dialects, which is just like what my club is. We have people meeting from various time zones. We have 10 different countries, people scattered all over the states as well, with our 29 members, and it's thriving. So I've learned that with this big challenge of doing something new, I know how to connect with people all over the world. And it's not just about doing things with technology, it's about connecting with other people. Back to you, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Next on the list is Joni Renee Laidlaw. Joni, can you answer the question? And please let me know if you need it repeated.
I do believe I remember the question. I actually fell into the online space as a labor of love. I started in a brick and mortar club. I'm from the Caribbean, District 81, Jamaica to be exact. And when I started at the Nova Power Speakers, the concept of a hybrid meeting was always fascinating for me. The first one we did was actually a hybrid meeting. It was broadcasting an in-person meeting. It became a fixation of mine. How can we include cyberspace? Because I live on social media. I am all about this space, and I wanted to incorporate it in an active way in our club meetings. I think I cheated a bit because COVID came along and we all couldn't meet in person anymore. We had to find an option, and there was none. Nobody knew what to do. This was before I had any idea that online clubs even existed, because this is not something that Toastmasters International promoted. And since I wasn't as versed as I am now on the website, I had no way to find out that there were online clubs, that there were persons who were already doing this who knew what to do. So it was a struggle every day to figure out the online space, all the nuances of where to meet, how to meet, all the glitches, how to get over them. But because it was a passion and a labor of love, I kept doing it. Now I'm a member of 4 clubs. I've started a specialty club for artists all the way in St. Lucia from Jamaica. Now, the beauty of the Caribbean is we're a bunch of small islands across water, which means it's kind of difficult for us to connect even as a district, because unlike America, where maybe I'm taking it, you could just grab up, well, a plane, but you could drive, walk if you were really, really, really determined, or do a Forrest Gump maybe. It's not connectable in an easy form, and we're across a wide variety. So this is a platform that's necessary. And now I am a member of Online Presenters. I'm actually also a member of a club in New York, and I even get to be an area director in North Carolina from Jamaica. So I adore this space, and I am one of the biggest cheerleaders, because again, it started for me as a labor of love. Back to you, Marianne.
Thanks so much, Joni. Back on with George Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Like a few other people here, I got started in online clubs very early. Before anyone ever said online club, my district, 57, part of the San Francisco Bay Area, was very quietly and low key doing a little bit of online club officer training, because we've got one section of the district that's way north, and it was really hard to get trainers up there. So, and being in a technology area, I was pretty comfortable with the concept. It was 10 years ago, can you believe it, 10 years ago, where we discovered that Toastmasters was quietly running several what they call staff study groups to experiment with online clubs to see if that was going to work or not, at the request of several people. I was in that for quite a while. You're going to hear from other people also were too, and also in the first officially chartered online club. Jump forward a little bit, and I spent the last 2 years in District 57 leadership. And as we all now know about this pandemic-y thing, suddenly every club was an online club. Either you went away or you were an online club. And like has already been mentioned, with those of us with online experience, we're helping others. So I experienced not only online clubs, being a member of First Citizens and then this club, but all district operations were suddenly and only done online. Whereas districts, one of the things we do in a district, or traditionally did do as a district, was we got together periodically. It was something that some people actually just love to do. I think they love it more than their club meetings sometimes, just getting together to talk to their friends they only see a couple of times a year. And in that time, we learned a whole lot about how to do online. One of the shocking experiences back in that staff study group is there we were, a dozen, almost 2 dozen people, and we said, well, let's have a meeting. Would you believe how many different formats clubs have around the world for meetings? Wow. The manual we all went to back then said you do, example gave, you do speeches and then you do table topics and then you do evaluations. Every possible permutation, aside from evaluations, first have been done. Some clubs evaluate their table topic speakers. Other things say, what a stupid idea. Why would you do that? So we discovered by working with each other all these things, how we would do it, and we evolved. I think we tried every part of the world's approach to online club formats just to find out what it would be like. So I think online clubs are here to stay. This genie is not going back in the bottle. And I think headquarters is trying to work out how to back away a little bit from 90 years of in-person only and figure out how to do online as a general regular part of the group. Back to you.
Well, thanks, George. And our final panelist weighing in is Mr. Larry Miller.
All right, thank you, Marianne. Well, I'm a fairly new Toastmaster. I joined in March of '93, and I totally love Toastmasters. It took me a long time to get my DTM because I love mentoring. And I love seeing people grow in their club and everything, and in their personal life and their work life. And then I was in District D4, which is San Francisco area, but then I moved to District 57. And George and I worked together for a long time as webmasters. We went back and forth as webmaster of District 57 and a few other things. And then one day I get this phone call from George and he says, Larry, we're having this staff group for Toastmasters looking at online clubs. You interested? Yes, I'm interested. I'm into all the computers and everything else, and online just seemed like a perfect fit for Toastmasters. And so I ditto everything that George said about our staff club meeting. And we went through GoToMeeting, yeah, throw that sucker out. And we went through all kinds of different tests of videos, online meeting platforms, And it was a lot of fun. And we had people from all over the world that was working with us. And like George said, there was a lot of different ideas that had to kind of meld together so that we could go back to Toastmasters International. And I think the first, if George, I think if I remember right, we actually tried to charter 2 years, like in 2014. And, you know, it was from TI, it was like, no, not even. So it took us 2 years to finally convince them that yes, Toastmasters International can have online clubs and they can be thriving clubs. And so when it came to the pandemic and everybody says, oh, you got to go online, I go, yes, I'm ready. And so, yep, George and I and a lot of people that were on online clubs helped a lot of the local clubs get online and thrive also. Back to you, Marianne.
Thanks, Larry. Well, now you can all see why these people have been invited to be with us tonight. We're going to move on to the next question. And I'm only going to ask 3 people to weigh in. So if you're not one of them, but have something to contribute, put your hand up, panelists. Without bringing hybrid into the conversation yet, because I don't know if you saw in the chat, but David said on October 24th, we are going to have a sequel that talks about hybrid meetings. So we don't want to talk about that just yet. But what is the case for a Toastmaster club meeting 100% online in the future? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Joni.
I believe that the advantages of an online club is actually an ability to find community. Personally, and as a member of the neurodivergent community, I can state we all speak the same language, but we don't all speak the same language. When you are forced into a certain geographical location, you're only exposed to those who are right next to you. In an online sphere, it opens up to give you the ability to find more persons with a like mind. I'll give you a good example of this. For EVV CON, finding online presenters for me was a whole different world. These are persons from all over the world, even somebody who I can ask about tomorrow, who all are evangelists for this space, which means if I want to know about an app to do something, these are the people I would discuss this. Now, the person in my geographical location may not generally have that kind of idea because they might not share those interests. It gives you a broader category of persons from which to associate and learn. The other thing is, I have an issue with time. I tell everybody I still have no idea what time zone I'm in. I have to query with everybody, but it's now wherever you are, even if now happens to be tomorrow. The thing about it is when you are able to get everyone in the same space to discuss ideas, you get a broader variety of that. And the online space affords that, because while it might be morning somewhere and evening somewhere, or yesterday, today, tomorrow, it's now everywhere at this time. So we can all coordinate to get to the same space at the same time to share ideas and grow. And you also get people from varying geographical locations with varying experiences and networks that you can also tap into. And that's why this is such an important space, because otherwise, persons you would never actually come across walking down the road, you may never see, you may never get the chance to meet. You get to do that here. Back to you, Marianne.
Well, thank you kindly, ma'am. George.
Please repeat the question, Marianne.
Sure. Without bringing hybrid into the conversation yet, what is the case for a Toastmasters club meeting 100% online in the future? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Thank you. Toastmasters is following the path of business, commercial enterprises. Companies, particularly the larger ones, adopted remote ways of communicating decades ago. And it was very simple. Why? They realized that they could get things done without putting people on airplanes all the time. Now, Toastmasters doesn't pay to put people on airplanes occasionally, except for a little district leader training once a year. But we've discovered that. I know people anecdotally here in my district who were quite opposed to online clubs when they first came out. Those of you that were first talking about online clubs away when they just got there, have a lot of arrows in your back from your fellow members saying what a terrible idea. Some of those folks are now the strongest adherents for online clubs. They've experienced it, they know what it's like, and they like it. Why? Well, there's this trade-off, isn't there, between meeting in person, being able to shake hands, have a hug, share snacks, and the transportation to and from that meeting versus with 5 minutes of overhead, I'm in a meeting. And no, I don't get to have the hug and the handshake, and I have to just look at your snacks across the screen, but it works. So I think we're going to have online clubs forever for the simple reason that it works for many of our people. I know members who just can't wait to get back to in person. They're putting up with online because they still want to be in Toastmasters, but they can't wait to get back to in person. An in-person meeting is a real meeting as far as they're concerned. I know other people that say, you know what, this is awfully handy, and I'm getting most of what I got out of Toastmasters by doing it online. And I'm going to keep doing it because I really like not getting in my car, getting on the bus or whatever. So we are going to have both forever. And I think Toastmasters did a remarkable job for an organization that takes so long to change how they do things. They practically spun on a dime when the pandemic hit and made changes, and they're still trying to make some changes. But we are going to have online forever. Other organizations founded about the time we were, like Rotary, same situation. They were 100% in-person club. They get together and they sing. That's the kind of social aspect they have. And they had to go to all online, and they're happy to come back to it. So we're now in a situation where every member can choose what kind of meeting they want to go to, whether it is wholly in person, wholly online, or as you said, we'll talk about it later, some mix of the two. It's here to stay because people now have the choice.
Well, thank you, George. Now, this is going to be a little harder for you, David, because you're such a big cheerleader for online meetings, but we really haven't heard too many disadvantages. Can you point out a few of those and any additional advantages that you might think of?
Well, I mean, I tell you that I very much missed my in-person club during the time where I couldn't do Toastmasters in person. And I had mixed feelings when they decided, when they got back to having a meeting room open again, that they decided to do hybrid. Because, well, for one thing, I was the one who was in charge of setting up the equipment for the hybrid meetings. And we'd go through all this effort, and then we'd have like 2 or 3 people in the room, and everybody else was online because it's a breakfast meeting, or there's a morning meeting. And people got used to staying in bed a little bit longer and just, staggering to the computer in time to fire up Zoom. And so we've actually had some challenges getting them back. The last couple of meetings, we've had a pretty full in-person room, and that helps make it feel a little bit more worthwhile. But, in the meantime, some interesting things happened. We attracted a member from Idaho who's here with us tonight, actually. Christine is our VP of membership. So the Florida Club has a VP of membership from Idaho. She brought in some folks from Europe and Asia. And so now we're a multinational club. Now, I actually would say that clubs should maybe think twice about giving up their identity as a local club. If you were traditionally as a local club, be careful about what you're giving up, how things are morphing. But, we have Christine, so it's okay, because she's fabulous. And it's all going to work out, I think. But, I actually have mixed feelings too about the contest format changing to where the contests wind up being online or hybrid, not in person. It's very, at least beyond maybe the area level. It's difficult to organize a hybrid meeting or an in-person meeting, because if anybody wants to be online, they're being allowed to participate online. It opens up new possibilities, but on the other hand, you may lose something in not having that in-person energy of everybody being in the room and the cheering and the clapping. So there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs. But online presenters, of course, is fabulous. Let's not have any confusion about that. Online presenters is fabulous because we're organized around this idea that this is where you're going to come and learn skills for doing better online meetings, better online events. And if you have any prospect of maybe doing webinars or things like that, this is a place to learn how to do that.
Well, thank you kindly. And if you are considering the switch to being totally online, you probably just want to take the temperature of your members to see what they want. And that's really the best barometer you have to make decisions with. Now, our next question. How well has Toastmasters International as an organization adapted to having online and hybrid options for Toastmasters Club? Larry, what do you have to say about that?
Ooh, yes. I think TI is kind of stuck in their ways. And, like several people have said, they do not change very easily and very fast. I personally, from my experience, believe that probably most of the upper echelon, and especially one certain CEO, would like, oh yeah, there's only one. I guess I shouldn't have said that, right? I should, but I happen to believe after talking with him that he would just really wish online clubs would go away. They're just too much trouble. And part of my experience from that is that when George and I and all the others were working on the online club, and then we finally chartered Netizens, there was a couple of times where we went to TI because we were having problems. And TI just said, figure it out yourself. But part of one of the problems was it was not good for Toastmasters International at all. But they still said, you figure it out on your own. Whereas if you were in a district, they would have said, go see your district director. So it's like they don't want to get involved in the clubs if there's a problem in the clubs. And so I am not a fan of the way they're treating online clubs. I mean, you can't even go on their website and find an online club by time. Because let's say I have an extra 2 hours that I want to spend at a Toastmasters club, I should be able to go online and say, okay, what online clubs meet from this time to this time? And then I get to pick and choose which club I get to go to. Number one, it's hard to find the list of online clubs. And then if you go down the list, it's just, this is the club, here's the website. that's a lot of information that I don't really need to have to go through just to go to a Toastmaster club. Back to you, Marianne.
Thanks, Larry. Before we move on, I'm going to ask, does anyone disagree with Larry? Panelists, raise your hand if you disagree. Okay, then we're going to just move on.
Well, slightly, if I may, Marianne, I'm not disagreeing with Larry per se, but what I would say is that Toastmasters International as an organization reflects Toastmasters International as a group of people. I'm involved in a number of brick and mortar only clubs. 2 brick and mortar only clubs plus 1 hybrid club here in District 69. Of the 2 brick and mortar only clubs, there are members who are virulently opposed to the expansion of Toastmasters into the online space. Now, obviously, I don't agree with them. And obviously, we have robust discussions about this matter, but Toastmasters as an organization reflects the views of its members. And we're all converts here. We're preaching to the converted, but we all know members of our home clubs who really genuinely dislike the concept of online. They don't see value in it, at least in the traditional Toastmasters sense. This club, Online Presenters, and here's a plug, this club was set up specifically so that we could learn how to use this environment effectively as communicators. But for a lot of members, this is not Toastmasters. This is just us sitting around in our pajamas and having a chat. So Toastmasters International reflects the views of its members. All we as online evangelists can do is try and convince those members, and then Toastmasters as an organization will follow the membership.
Thank you, Graham. Both online and hybrid clubs tend to attract an international membership. How can that be reconciled with the organization of Toastmasters International, which revolves around geographic districts? And are geographic districts still relevant? Because I've seen that many districts are going outside of their district to find area directors and people to help govern those districts. So do you think the districts, the way they're structured, make sense anymore in general, and especially for online clubs? Joseph.
Thank you, Marianne. I love how you punched up that question, by the way. Oh, have you seen the district map, everybody? With regions and all? The average club member doesn't even know what goes past the club. They just know they're joining Toastmasters. They don't know their district from their division. You know, sometimes they see the area director and then this concept of a region, and they keep adding more and more and doing realignments. I was a part of E55 last year, and now my club's a part of C33. How do they come up with these things? I feel, to your point, and you might have been leading us in a certain direction, and we're being way agreeable here, which is perhaps not what David was intending. We want more of a lively debate, but I felt like that question, it was presuming a certain thing, you know, that we are starting to transcend what is going on internationally with the districts. We're all getting interconnected. And that's where I could see, to Larry's point, with a certain CEO who shall remain unnamed. How do you have everything mapped then? It's like a web where everything's getting interconnected from people all over the world. There is no geography. It's all based perhaps on whatever theme or group of people that somebody connects with. And that's what is special about our club, where it's not so much about a geography. That's perhaps what was limiting before. Physically, if you didn't have a certain club that was a type of a theme that you were really looking for. My club is tragic comedy, which is a thespian themed club focusing on the dramatic arts, where people do stage monologues. We have people who do stand-up comedy. I'm a filmmaker. We do different things that are all in the vein of dramatic arts. That club might not exist in a certain area. It might not even exist in a certain division. It probably would exist in a district, but it would be a little bit of a drive. You have to go the extra mile to find that if you're looking for it physically, but now you can find it easily because it's online. Granted, TI still has to get its act together as far as making that easily searchable online. When my club got chartered, it was at the top of the list, and now it's somewhere in the middle. Like, not even that is organized well. And we're all within the same on district, which is District U. Fortunately, they messed up with me where I'm also in a district where I'm in District 31. So I get some people to find me more easily. And that has certainly helped. We got a number of people in the Boston area. That's the best of both worlds, I feel, if you can do both. Back to you, Marianne.
Okay, well, thank you. And I will call on Joni next.
Thank you, Marianne. I do have to add to this conversation, and I'm glad that Joseph brought up undistricted. Now, undistricted is one of those buckets where they throw everybody in that they don't know what to do with them. But right now, they know what to do with online. We have a space. We have persons who say, I want to charter a club. I don't want a hybrid club. I want an online club. Who gives those people guidance? Where do they go? Do they just get thrown or get chucked into the bucket of, okay, we don't know what to do with you? How do they get guidance? I will never be someone, because I wear my era director pin proudly, who enjoys the setting because how you pass on information is still top down. I know what I'm doing. I have an idea. I pass it on. And that's the reason for the district setting. And I will never say get rid of it. What I will suggest, though, is an online district. Take it out of we're in a space that there isn't enough clubs to do it, or we don't know what to do with these people until you have enough clubs that are online to create its own space. Then you'll be able to do the support in the same way that you do in a district for training, etc. And if somebody says to TI, I want to do an online only club, they have somewhere to reference them where they can get aid and backup. Back to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Joni. I'm going to actually, I see two hands up, but I am going to ask the next question, which kind of dovetails into this one. So I'll call on David and Larry first to make sure they get their say. So as most of you are aware, online clubs are members of District U, which doesn't really offer support or resources for its members. So does it make sense for a 100% online club to be part of a district? If you were chartering one today, would you want to be part of a traditional district, or do you want the freedom to do things that you wish without a lot of governance? And if you do want a district, what kind of support are you looking for? So what kind of structure do you think should exist? So David.
All right.
And you can answer one or many of those questions.
But just maybe to clear up a misconception, the original crop of online clubs were all put into District U and were undistricted. Today, you can actually go to, you can form an online club and you can affiliate it with a district. That is allowed. Now, Larry told me that he thought they did that to sort of dilute the online presence and prevent us from agitating to form an online district. I do believe that we need some kind of organizational unit. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a district. There aren't enough online clubs, online only clubs, maybe to form a district. There's something in between called, I think, a territorial council. Others might be able to correct me on the terminology. But even that, I think maybe it needs to be thought of more as a community of excellence. I don't care what you call it. I think there needs to be some place where online club leaders can come together around their common interests. And maybe it should be online and hybrid. I don't think, maybe there's not an organizational capacity enough to address both of those, but some way that we could come together and say, have a training event that was specifically about how to run a good online meeting, to how to organize a good online club or hybrid club. And so, you know, I think in the corporate world, sometimes they have dotted line reporting relationships. They have matrix organizations that work or don't work, but I think the organization needs to try some experiments in allowing other ways for us to organize. George told me something interesting, that there was a proposal from one of the people who was involved in the redistricting or reallocation process for his area. They thought maybe they would form an area for the online clubs within the district, which would have made some sense. And Toastmasters International said, no, you can't do that. And I'm not sure whether they said that you can't do that because of anything that was ever written down anywhere, but you know, the person that they were talking to said, no, you can't do that. And so, you know, why not? Maybe there needs to be a district that is anointed to be a home for online clubs, or a home away from home from online clubs, something like that. There ought to be a way of working it out where we have some way of bringing online clubs together and holding the next VTM con without necessarily going through a lot of hassle. Larry, I'll toss it over to you.
Well, I agree with some of the stuff that you're talking about, David, but not all of it. I totally agree that we need to have some kind of structure for online clubs, not just be thrown into the bit bucket. And as far as connecting to a district, hey, no. This is an online club. Attaching yourself to a district will discouple you from your online, the rest of the clubs, because now you have to abide by whatever the district is saying. I believe that all online clubs should have their same structure they have right now. It's a perfect structure and it works. Online clubs should have a similar structure, maybe not as detailed as that. Maybe it's just 1 or 2 levels, but we should have our own structure and not be tied to a district. And another thing that, and I don't think it should be tied to hybrid clubs either. I'm also the one that has to set up a hybrid club if we have a hybrid club, and it is a lot of work, but needless to say, it still takes away from being online. And you have a division between your members. You're going to have a different group of members that are in person, and also that are online. And another thing that I totally disagree with is for districts having members from out of the district. This year we had a district, a person that won the district conference speech contest from England. Now that takes away from the people that are in the district. The district is a certain entity, and the people in that district should be able to be participating in the contest and everything in their own world, and not having someone from England become a member so that they can win the district contest. Now, I'm not saying that person did that intentionally, but when I found out that the winning person in our district was from England, it's like blew my mind. I do not believe in that at all. Back to you, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Larry. And we're going to do a quick wrap-up question. So I'd like your answer to be sharp and to the point. How can online clubs and their members make the most positive contribution to bringing about the future for online clubs that makes sense to all of us? Let's start with George.
Thank you, Marianne. Well, you asked for some controversy here, and I'll be glad to provide it. During the pandemic, Toastmaster made a big change that I didn't expect them to make. As they said, any club can be a member of any district. And in fact, we have many clubs where the members are in more than one district. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, there are a lot of members that are in clubs in more than one district. I have started or helped start several clubs that were online only because their members were somewhat distributed, but they wanted to be in a district. Some of you talked about wanting an online district. And of course, you're thinking about the same thing I am probably. The district provides support to clubs. It can't control them. No one can tell a club what to do because it is an independently chartered, incorporated entity. District leaders can try, but they can't make it happen. And I asked them why. Well, we get an area director assigned to it. We get club officer training available to it. We get the other programs that the district is offering. We get the opportunity to be a district officer, perhaps from a distance. So it's the club's choice. And again, it is the entirely the club's choice. And I don't see anything magic about it. We have one online club in our district that is not international. In fact, most of them aren't. I think in the very, very early days, the novelty of an international membership was quite the amazing thing, but now it's not. They simply had members that were somewhat outside our district boundaries, but they wanted to be in the district because they knew the services that were offered. So we need, several people now said we need some structure. I don't oppose having an online district, but I say that structure, that support is available today, right now, for any club that wants to take advantage of it. Some clubs don't. Some clubs love being independent and don't want to have anything to do with the district, but the thing is, it's now available.
Cowboys. Thanks, George. Joseph, quickly, please, because we are really over time right now. So I just want to hear from everybody one last time, though.
Oh, sure. I was
Marianne, I'm
opposed.
going to give up the time I had reserved at the end to try and find consensus. I'm just going to write up something based on what people said. So we'll try and segment to getting more audience participation in just a second. Sorry to interrupt, Joseph.
Oh, sure. Well, like some folks here, I was opposed to having a district, and it happened by accident. I thought my club was just going to be a part of District U. And then I called up TI when I ended up being a part of District 31, which is in Massachusetts. And then I started getting the district leaders, in my mind at the time, breathing down my neck, like, oh, where's your club success plan? All right, we have to have a mentorship meeting. You got to meet with your club growth director. And that is part of the reason that I feel my co-founder dropped out. She didn't want to deal with all that. She just wanted to have a fun club, and that was it. However, there's a reason that DCP exists, and that's what I came to realize. My club struggled for several months. And it was not until after 6 months that we chartered when I said, all right, let's go ahead and do this whole DCP thing. That's Distinguished Club Program. On-district clubs don't have to do that to the same extent with the training, because there's no training for districts. So you lose a point there. In terms of what you have to do, it's fewer points that you have to do to get presence distinguished. I feel, based on my experience of having all the assistants, that it has been truly instrumental for the success of my club. The fact that we had the district leaders, it was a little contentious at first. I wanted to do a certain theme. We had certain people say, oh, you don't want to do that. Some people wanted to support our thespian mission. Others wanted it to be more of a traditional club to make it more successful. But we stuck with the program, what our original mission was, and it worked out for the best. And we did it with DCP. We achieved presence distinguished. We got the best of both worlds, and the district leaders were happy. We've had everyone, including our area director, division director, district director, as well as the district champion for the international speech contest, coming to practice her speech before she went to compete for the World Championship of Public Speaking. It really worked out for the best that we've had everybody focused on making that contribution and treating it as if it were an in-person club with the help of district leadership, even though it's an online club. Back to you, Marianne.
Thank you so much. Joni, let's hear from you.
I am going to have to say that if the district, and I'm going to start with clubs, are an autonomous body, which means if the district is breathing down your neck, members don't join districts, they don't join areas, they don't join regions, they join clubs. The reason I propose having some organization is when you get into the space, if you don't have someone to guide you through the red tape and the process, and you have to blindly fall forward with this, it is extremely stressful and extremely difficult. The proper way that the Toastmasters, and I will tell everybody, I rally with this, is that we support each other and we create a supportive environment. So nobody should be breathing down your neck. There is a reason for the club success plan, especially for an online club. If you start thinking about it, what reason do you have for persons to do their speeches if it's just show up whenever? It's not a breathing down your neck. And that's where training, that's where this comes in. It's the perspective and the sharing of ideas on the space and emphasizing the importance of certain things. And personally, I am an anti-red tape person. I saw in the chat, DTM means determined troublemaker. No, I am a determined trend maker. And I can say I don't always like following in step, but we do need to plan, because if you don't plan, you won't have anywhere to go. In doing these things, you will find out what your members want. And that's the point. It's about the with him. What do the members want from the organization? What do the members want from being on an online club that they can't get from being in a hybrid club, that they can't get from being in a brick and mortar club? And that's the point. And that is why we do need some form of structure and organization. But I can tell you, I will be one of the card-carrying first members to rebel if it becomes too much. Back to you, Marianne.
Okay, thanks, Joni. Larry, let's hear from you.
Well, my final comment is basically, I am totally for online clubs to be separate and for in-person clubs to be separate. Now, in-person clubs want also to have a hybrid club. That's fine, as long as it's there in a district and my online club is not in a district. Because I am in an online club, Netizens, which I helped charter back in 2016. And I have a local club, and I've been in several other clubs. And I have to say that I would have to say that I'm going to say ditto to everything that Joni said. So I don't want to repeat all that, because it might be way over time. But she is right on. Thank you, Marianne.
Okay, how about Graham?
All right, I'm going to ignore largely the discussion about districted versus undistricted clubs, because by the end of the year, I expect to be members of an online-only undistricted club and an online-only districted club. So I'm having the best of both worlds. I'm going to answer your specific question, which is how can online clubs and members make the most positive contribution to bringing the future of online clubs? I believe that the primary role of online clubs is to act as a community, but not necessarily a geographic community, which is how we have always understood a Toastmasters club to be. I like to think of a community of interest. I mentioned that I'm a member of 3 online-only clubs. One of them, this club, which is all about learning how to use this space effectively. One of them is a storytelling club. All of our presentations, all of our evaluations, all of our table topics, they are all in the form of stories and learning the art and skill of storytelling. The third one is interesting. It's specifically for disc jockeys, masters of ceremony, wedding celebrants, those working in that space. You have to be a DJ or MC to be a member of this club. And we have members from around the world because we are a community of interest. And that's the role that I see for online clubs going forward, to be a community of interest, not necessarily a community of geography, but a community of interest to allow members to get the benefits of Toastmasters working within their area of interest and expertise. So that, I believe, is how clubs can make a positive contribution and how members can make a positive contribution to online clubs.
Thank you, Graham. Last but certainly not least, let's hear from David.
I'll try and keep it brief, but one reaction to what we heard a few moments ago, particularly from Larry, about not allowing people to join from outside the geographical district. It's too late. It's too late. It has happened over the past couple of years. It has happened to Michael. Now, I do have concerns about whether districts are really prepared to support and engage those members who are living in China, but are members of a South Florida club, and then by extension, that South Florida district. So that's part of what we're trying to talk through today. But I think we should actually hear from some other people who are here, because we said we would make it more of a conversation rather than just talking at them. And so let's go, let's drop the spotlights and we'll ask Jim Barber to
Well,
give us.
actually,
You
Jim
can-
reports that there's no questions in the chat. There's just a lot of comments. So I would encourage everybody to hit the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat and save that chat, because there's a lot of interesting information and a lot of interesting opinions. But if anyone does have a question, now's the time, put it in the chat and we'll get to you and let's all discuss it.
I see Jay Ligda has raised her hand.
His hand, yeah.
Yes, this isn't a question, actually, it's a comment, and it follows off what David was just saying, that I'd really like to see an online district. I was, or I am a immediate past president of Netizens that both Larry and George have talked about. And one of the things we looked into last year was joining a district. We found out, hey, we can join a district now. And we did a lot of research looking into the different districts, and basically we came to the conclusion that anyone would work as long as they would support online clubs. And the final conclusion we came to was, we don't know how these districts are going to support online clubs after the pandemic's over. We don't want to be sitting in the corner of the room while everybody else is having this great convention, when we could do great things like VTM CON, or whatever it is called now, David, that I think we really need an online district to support online clubs and to give online clubs the structure that we need to thrive, really.
Thank you, Jay, and I apologize for calling you a she. That was
My beautiful long locks.
Zoom squares aren't working well on my monitor. I see Angela has raised her hand.
Two things. One is, what I'm hearing from all of this sounds like there's so many potential iterations of what the future could look like. And so maybe one of the gifts that we make to TI is compiling all of these issues to be considered, because I'm looking at the chat as we go, and all of these comments have validity. So my recommendation to them is that they really look at all of these considerations and begin to figure this thing out. That's number one. Number two, innovation. My concern, and I did send a memo to TI, they asked me for my opinion and I gave it. If TI wants to stay leaders in this whole area of communication, you have to consider where the world is going. The world is going to different modes of communication. So you need to be aware of that. And you also need to be aware of the fact that younger people are doing those different modes of communication. And even if you look around the room and here, the majority of the people here are over 40. If TI wants to grow and survive, they must change with the time. Do some pilot tests, just the way you do in corporations, and see what happens. Last thing, Clubhouse. That didn't come up, but now there's all of these audio Toastmasters clubs. I run table topics online, audio only. Put that in the mix. Metaverse, put it in the mix. They have speaking opportunities in the metaverse. This is where we're going, and TI needs to get with the times. I'm done.
Thank you,
I personally
Angela.
don't want to be holding a meeting in the Facebook metaverse with no legs, wandering around bodiless, but that's just me.
Joseph had another comment.
Oh, I can only echo what Angela just said. We really have to get with the times here and get with how things are being done from a technology perspective. Yeah, I was just clapping my hands. That's all I wanted.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through all the people looking for hands. If I'm missing you, I apologize. Anybody have other comment?
Just a follow up to that, if I may, there was a survey came out this week which showed that 1 in 3 Australians, according to this survey, would quit or would actively seek another job if they were forced to return to office rather than continuing to work from home. I'm wondering if we were to extrapolate that to Toastmasters membership, how much damage are we doing to our organization if we, as an organization, don't grasp all of the opportunities that are available?
Maybe I could just ask for one little, informal vote of consensus. Do we have consensus here that there ought to be some sort of organization that allows online clubs to come together and discuss issues, hold events? We don't necessarily have to decide what form it would take, whether it be a district or what, but do we all agree that there should be something for us to come together? All right, I think I see some hand waving. It's not the most formal vote, but I don't know if they'd accept it as that either. Does anybody disagree? Because George was saying that there's already a structure, there's a district structure. But
yes, I disagree.
what do you disagree with? What do you mean, Paul?
I disagree that any organization needs to be set up in order to enable online clubs to be part of a community of sorts. I believe that online clubs are full of people capable of reaching out to other online clubs in the world. It is easy enough to find out where there are online clubs. It is easy enough to send ambassadors from one club to another. It is easy enough to hold meetings among several clubs. There is absolutely no need, in my opinion, to put any form of organization on top of this. It is actually the fluidity and the ability to improvise that I value most, and that's my opinion. Thank you, David.
Jim Gold, do you have your hand up as well, or I'm sorry, I'm overwriting our chat monitor. But
Oh, no, I was just going, somebody, I think it might have been Jicky, but I'm not sure about that, asked if the results are going to be passed on to Toastmasters. We've had a lot of great ideas here. You're kind of in charge of this. Would you want to speak to that? Is this going to go anywhere?
we will send the recording over to Matt Kinsey personally, who maybe will watch it, and other perhaps relay on to other board members, and we'll and see if maybe I can follow up by email with folks, get some feedback on potential items of consensus. Paul just messed with my consensus, but that's okay. Joni, you have your hand up?
I do. This example is why I am pushing for the organization, and I'll tell you why. Yes, an online club can be associated with a district, but that district is going to push the district mission of the geographical location. If you have an online district, because remember, TI is still voting, and you take you 5 hours to decide whether or not you're going to pick a topic to discuss for 5 minutes, because everybody has to have some amendment and addendum and vote. The point is that unless you have someone carrying it, we can, and I'm going to say this in Jamaican vernacular because I cannot think of anything else that will work, beat up a gum. We can talk about this from now until next year, but that's not how policy changes, sadly enough. Then all we're going to do is keep talking. And when something like a letter of cease and desist goes to David, because we want to decide that we want to incorporate the metaverse, or we want to do Clubhouse, or we want to do something that interests us in this sphere, but we have, how does that benefit a geographical location? It doesn't. They couldn't care less. They're going to push their agenda because they're going to want their funding from TI in the same way. So how alignment, I understand for the DCP point, but how do you grow as an entity into a space if you don't have anybody to vote for you, to carry your votes, to carry your needs? Because if you're in an online club but in one district, you want, and then all we're going to do is we're going to be rogue forever, which I don't mind, because when the Death Star came down, I was applauding. But then at the end of it, you end up with a Mad Max in the Thunderdome, which is every man for himself. Doesn't really work. We do need that in order to make change, because it's the change in policy that actually affects everything. And I had to learn the hard way. You have to assimilate and change.
Joni, yeah, let's try and wrap it. We'll give Paul Miller a chance to say something. Try and keep it brief, Paul, and then we will stop the recording. We'll stop the Facebook stream, and perhaps some people can stay on and chat for a little bit after that. But Larry.
Well, first I want to say to Joni, every man for himself. What about the women? Huh? Huh? I just saw something in the chat that just struck a chord too, was that we're paying 45, as an online club, we're paying $45 a member every 6 months to TI. What do we get for that? We get a heartache. We need something for that.
All
Back
right.
to you, David.
Can we wrap it there? I'm sure some folks will be happy to stick around and chat for a few more minutes.